You check your phone and see that someone you knew years ago has just bought a house. You are happy for them. At least you think you are. Then you put the phone down, look around your own room, and for some reason, the life you were perfectly fine with 10 minutes ago suddenly feels unfinished. Nothing happened to you. No opportunity disappeared. You didn't become less successful between one scroll and the next. You just saw that someone else simply reached a place that you haven't reached yet. And somehow, their arrival has made your own life feel a little more behind than it did 5 minutes ago. Maybe it happens again when you hear that someone your age is getting married. You might genuinely be glad for them. But later, when you are alone, you catch yourself wondering why your own relationship hasn't reached that point. You start thinking about how old you are now, how long you've been single, or how different your life looks from what you once imagined. Then it happens somewhere else. A former colleague gets promoted, and suddenly the job you've been tolerating doesn't just feel ordinary anymore. It feels like evidence that you haven't moved far enough. Someone starts a business, and an idea you've been putting off for years suddenly feels like something you should have started already. A friend announces that they're having a baby, and an ordinary Tuesday can leave you wondering whether you are somehow running out of time. Even travel can do it. You see someone spending a month in a country you've always wanted to visit, and for a few seconds your own life seems smaller. Not because their experience took anything away from yours, but because you can suddenly see a version of life that you haven't lived. And sometimes the comparison is even more subtle than that. You hear someone talking about what they are working toward, how their career is developing, what they have planned for the next few years, and you begin questioning your own direction. You weren't worried about it yesterday. You may not even have been dissatisfied with your life this morning. But now, there is this uncomfortable thought sitting somewhere in the background. Should I be further along by now? That question can follow you into places where it doesn't belong. You are having dinner, but you're thinking about where you thought you'd be at this age. You're trying to enjoy a weekend, but part of your mind is calculating how many years you have left to accomplish the things you imagined. You make progress on something important and still find yourself wondering why it isn't happening faster. And the more people you see moving forward, the easier it becomes to feel as though your own life is standing still. This is what makes the feeling so difficult to pin down. There isn't necessarily one thing you are missing. There isn't always a crisis demanding to be fixed. You may have a job, friends, plans, responsibilities, and plenty of things you are grateful for. Yet somewhere underneath all of that is the feeling that you should have arrived somewhere else by now. And once that feeling takes hold, you can start looking at your own life differently. A year becomes a year you haven't accomplished enough in. A birthday becomes a reminder of what hasn't happened yet. Someone else's good news becomes a quiet question about your own future. You can even begin treating things you genuinely want as though they are overdue. You don't simply want a stable relationship anymore. You feel late for one. You don't simply want financial security. You feel as though you should have reached it already. You don't simply want to discover meaningful work. You start wondering why you haven't figured it out yet. The desire may be completely yours, but the deadline may not be, because the deadline can form quietly through repeated exposure to other people's visible arrivals until their timing begins to feel like a reference point for your own. But why does someone else's timing start to feel like a deadline for your own life? Because the mind has a basic need to evaluate where it stands, and it does so by assessing whether its current position matches what it expected or considers appropriate. But in many areas of life, there is no clear standard for knowing what on track actually looks like. There is no universal measure for how successful your career should be at 30, 40, or 50. There is also no fixed point that tells you when a relationship should become permanent. And there is no objective score showing whether you have moved through your 20s, 30s, or 40s at the right pace. Life does not come with a timetable that tells you what should have happened by each birthday. So when there is no clear standard, the mind looks for information that can help it judge where it stands. Other people provide that information. This is part of what psychologist Leon Festinger described in social comparison theory. He noted that when objective standards are unavailable, people tend to evaluate themselves by comparing themselves with others. Other people's achievements and milestones are visible and easy to identify compared to the slow, private process of figuring out your own life. For instance, you can see that someone is 32 and has bought a house. Someone is 29 and has started a business, or someone is 35 and has completely changed careers. The mind can place those facts beside your own situation almost instantly. You no longer simply notice what another person has done. You now use their position to evaluate yours. And if they are further ahead in something you care about, the difference becomes more meaningful. Why? Because the outcome matters to you. Think about it. If you have never wanted to own a house, someone buying one may not affect how you see your own life. But if owning a home is something you have been hoping for, then seeing someone in a similar position achieve it can make the difference between your lives feel much more important. The same is true with relationships, money, careers, children, travel, or any other goal you genuinely want. And the comparison becomes even stronger when the person is around your age. Someone 10 years older reaching a milestone may not tell you much about where you should be, but someone your age can feel different, because their age gives the achievement a clearer reference point. You are not simply seeing what another person has accomplished. You are seeing what someone at roughly the same stage of life as you has accomplished. That makes the difference easier to interpret as information about your own position. And that is when the comparison can start to feel personal. Their achievement is no longer just something they have done. It becomes something that makes you question where you should be. Why haven't I reached it yet? That question changes the comparison again, because you are no longer simply noticing what someone else has achieved. You are now turning the comparison toward yourself and looking for an explanation for the difference. And this is where comparison can become self-critical. Instead of seeing two people with different circumstances and different outcomes, the mind can turn the difference into a judgment about your own progress. You may start wondering whether you are doing enough, making the right choices, or using your abilities well. A difference that began as simple information can therefore become a criticism of yourself. They have achieved something I want, can gradually become, what is wrong with me that I haven't? And once the comparison becomes self-critical, it can change how you interpret your own past. You may start going back through earlier decisions and viewing them differently. A degree that once felt like an important accomplishment can start looking like something that took too long. A job that helped you pay your bills can suddenly look like evidence that you were not ambitious enough. A relationship that ended may become something you believe you should have recognized as wrong much earlier. The problem is that you are no longer evaluating those experiences based on what you knew or needed at the time. You are evaluating them using information you only have now. You don't see that you needed the past experience to become the person you are now. You only see the outcome you wish you had reached, so the choices that came before it can start looking like obstacles. But your earlier decisions were made without knowing how your life would unfold. You were responding to the information, circumstances, opportunities, and priorities available to you then. And the person you are comparing yourself with may have had circumstances that were completely different from yours. They may have had more support, more financial security, better opportunities, stronger connections, or simply a different set of circumstances. Or maybe they faced difficulties that you know nothing about, but managed to navigate them in ways you cannot see from the outside. Their life may not have been easier. They may simply have had different circumstances, made different choices, or found different opportunities. The point is that you do not have enough information to treat their outcome as a fair measure of your own. But even knowing that does not necessarily make the feeling of being behind disappear. You can understand that your circumstances are different and still feel the pressure created by the comparison. Because once you have decided that someone else is ahead of you, it becomes tempting to believe that you need to do something about the gap. You may feel an urge to compensate, to work harder, to make a decision, to change direction, or to finally start the thing you have been postponing. And some of that can be useful. Comparison can sometimes reveal something you genuinely want to change, but it can also create a different kind of pressure. You are no longer pursuing something because you have carefully decided that it matters to you. You are pursuing it because you cannot stand feeling behind. Those can look almost identical from the outside. You can work harder in both situations. You can make the same career change, start the same business, or begin dating more seriously, but internally, the motivation is completely different. One comes from wanting to build something. The other comes from wanting to escape the feeling that you are falling behind. And when the second one is driving you, reaching the goal may not give you the relief you expected. Because the real problem was never only the goal, it was the judgment attached to not having it. That is why someone can finally achieve something they once felt behind for not having and still immediately notice the next thing they are missing. The comparison has not actually ended. It has simply found a new target, and that is where looking sideways can become exhausting. Not because other people's success is harmful, but because every achievement you notice can become another instruction about what you should be doing with your own life. This is where comparison stops helping you understand what you want and starts telling you what you should want. And once that happens, it becomes harder to tell the difference between a genuine desire and a desire created by comparison. You may genuinely want the house, the relationship, or the career change. But ask yourself, would I still want this if I had never seen someone else achieve it? Sometimes the answer will be yes, because seeing someone else do it may simply bring something into focus that was already important to you. Their achievement may give you a clearer picture of something you genuinely want for yourself, but sometimes the answer will be no, because you may realize that what attracted you was not actually the house, the relationship, the career, or the lifestyle itself. It was what having those things seemed to say about you. That you were successful, that you were doing well, or that you were finally where you were supposed to be. And that standard is difficult to satisfy because there will always be another achievement to notice. The house can become the promotion can become the relationship can become the family. There is always another place where someone else appears to have something you do not, so you can spend a great deal of energy trying to get rid of the feeling of being behind without ever questioning the standard that created it. The answer, then, is not to stop noticing other people's lives. That is impossible. People will achieve things you want. Someone will announce good news that touches a part of your own life you feel uncertain about. You will encounter people whose circumstances, choices, or outcomes make you question your own. What matters is what happens after you notice. Someone else's achievement can tell you, I want that. It does not have to become, something is wrong with me because I don't have it. That distinction matters. A desire can be useful information without becoming evidence against you. You can want a different career without deciding that your current one means you failed. You can want a relationship without turning being single into a personal deficiency. You can also want financial security without treating your present circumstances as proof that you are inadequate. And perhaps most importantly, another person's progress does not reduce the value of what is already present in your own life. Their success belongs to their life. It does not become a verdict on yours. Because being behind only makes sense if everyone is supposed to be moving toward the same destination, following the same route, under the same conditions. They are not, and neither are you. So when someone else's good news suddenly makes your own life feel smaller, ask yourself what that actually revealed. Maybe there is something you genuinely want. Maybe there is something you are ready to change. Or maybe you were completely at peace with your life until someone else's progress gave you a new standard to measure yourself against. Those are very different experiences. And learning to tell them apart may be more useful than trying to convince yourself that you should not compare at all. because you do not need to stop looking at other people's lives. You just need to stop using their lives as the answer to the question of whether your own life is going well.